Hey everyone, Antipeter1M here and welcome to my channel. I want to think about the idea of clinicians and whether they tell the truth to their patients all the time. It's something that I've been exposed to for a very long time in the mental health involuntary cliency system. I've been an involuntary client of mental health for something like 17 years now. It's been a very long time and, well, not for the entire time. I was actually itinerant for some of that time, escaping from police and that sort of thing. But one of the things that I notice about my clinicians is that they don't always tell you the truth. And I wonder whether they have what's motivating them not to tell the entire truth. So let me discuss this. The actual truth is that clinicians do not know the entire picture. They do not see the full picture of the suffering that exists in this world. And at the same time, they feel they have a duty to the patient locally and specifically to try and amend the misbehaviors and misdemeanors of that patient. And of course, the mental illness aspect comes into it as well. But I noticed that it's mostly, especially with the police, it's mostly a case of dealing with things in terms of trying to find convenience and compliance of the patient. Convenience and compliance. I went to a speech pathologist recently, and whilst I admitted some of the things were wrong with my voice, such as nasality and nodules in my voice, my speech pathologist didn't admit to these very readily. He sort of was euphemistic about it. And I thought that sort of tactic was quite interesting because it not only insulated me from having bad negative thoughts about myself immediately, but it gave me the impression that there was nothing wrong with my voice. Nothing wrong at all. And it made me think that, hey, everything's okay, that sort of thing. And I don't agree with that method particularly, but I think it's a particular tactic that clinicians use to not exacerbate negative thoughts about people, because if someone has a negative view of their own voice, for example, it can really drive people to the wall. And even though I'm emotionally equipped to deal with these things, my speech pathologist doesn't know that. So obviously he has to defend me against my thoughts that I have negative thoughts about my own voice, if that makes sense. And it's a similar situation with my clinicians and mental health. My clinicians and mental health never actually explicitly say what is wrong with me. They say, oh, it's all in the file, it's all in the records. If I had to give details about your medical history, I would have to look in the records, and that would be too much trouble. That's the sort of things that they say. They never explicitly tell you what's wrong with you. And it's a combination of both euphemism, well, it is euphemistic. It's a combination of both protecting the immediate emotions of the patient and simply being dishonest and simply not knowing the facts. So I think all things being equal, if I had a choice, I would rather my clinicians be completely honest about it and tell me directly what they thought was wrong with me. But unfortunately, all of my clinicians have not been in a position to do that, or not been willing and capable of doing that. So we live in a society where communication does not bridge all the gaps and solve all the problems and all the issues that exist, especially even the major ones. They still linger around because communication dynamic is so poor, and we cannot solve all our problems. There's too many of them all at once. I think when we're trying to remain friends with other people, we often allied the ideas that pertain to criticizing them. And I had a similar question about whether we should have an agenda when we form new friendships with people. It's very easy for me to make friends in this day and age of social media. But the idea of keeping friends is much harder, because when I expose my minimalist and vegan natalist views, I lose a lot of friends that way. And whilst there are people who are very open-minded to listening to my views and sort of entertaining the thoughts in their mind, there are many others who do not have the same acumen and ability to reason. I think one of the aims of my friendships is to make people as much as possible similar to myself in terms of belief, which is somewhat selfish and somewhat noble sort of aim. If we were all kind people, vegan, natalists, minimalists, and so on, the world would be a better place, that sort of thing. But it's a sort of political thing, and I think the word political is quite an ugly word and quite an ugly concept. But that's the way things are. If you want, we live in a world where things are so critical and crucial that converting people to the same thing as ourselves becomes some sort of a game. A pretty ugly sort of political game, but one that I find is so important. And yeah. So I hope I've given you more information on my situation and the way that I operate my life. And I will see you next time with more news. Bye for now.